I'm particularly interested in your perspective from, as an attorney, as someone who's sort of tasked with navigating some pretty complex seas. And my next question, and we're going to get into some of these sort of rate limiting factors and what needs to be done to overcome them. And I suspect we're going to lean into you quite a bit, Kaushal. But any reflections on Julie and Hatel's opening remarks? Kaushal, I believe you are muted.
Yeah, so I do agree with Heather and Juliana. So if we, I believe like, in the next couple of years would be really a very promising time for biosimilar development and the biosimilar companies. Uh, so if I look at back or since like, in 2014 when BPCI was enacted, although law was pretty much on paper, but most of companies were struggling. There was no proper process. People were not having idea in what way litigation should be proceed and what should be the outcome. And there were many surprises. So fortunately, with time, uh, now we have a much more clear path forward, which definitely affects the cost and control the cost. So if you look at the 2014, as Ms. Juliana said, like we are going to have a anniversary on March 6th. So when Giorgio came, it was a really a very tough battle on the IP side and the litigation side. It was Sandoz. They actually really exemplified in what way biosimilar should be litigated, and later on, like means, but the issue was market penetration. So, being a biosimilar company, we used to have a very lengthy clinical trials, analytical burdens, along with litigations and the number of patents handling. So it's really was a very tough for most of companies, except like big big giants. Small companies cannot even think about the biosimilar. In 2018-19, if you look, the market penetration significantly increased when Herceptin and Avastin were genericized. So 24-26% market penetration we could see. And that actually motivated many small companies to even think about. So as Hetal said, like, means we have just seen Denosumab. But the interesting part is if you look at now approvals and means we usually see like ustekinumab, denosumab, there are 5 6 players who are very head to head in terms of getting an approval, and so that shows like companies are having interest. They see viability in the process is much more economic and having transparency, and and that's the way, like means coming to your questions of like most of many of the molecules, it's almost around, I see around $70 billion molecules are going to off patent till 2030. So given to the less litigation volume, better clinical understanding and regulatory path forward, I think it's a very good time for biosimilar applicant to really take as much as molecule, and as Juliana mentioned, like we can definitely meet and comply with the purpose of enacting of the BPCIA by providing a much more affordable drugs to the patient population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about, from my perspective, learning about some of this for the first time. It's interesting to think about the rate limiting factors that sort of come pre market plan, right? That you deal with on
Correct.
litigation and IP side, and then some of the rate limiting factors on the post approval side, like Julie and Hatel have both commented on PBMs and market access. So I want to stay while you're big on my screen, Kaushal. I want to stick with you right now. You just implied that the litigation environment is actually you think a little cleaner than it's been. Did I interpret that correctly?
Correct. Yeah, so litigation environment is much clear now compared to a decade ago or like 6 7 years ago. uh, and but litigation is one of the rate limiting step, I must say. So we know like the recent aflibercept cases, like so there are 4 to 5 companies they have been litigating aflibercept, and so there is a Samsung involved, Biocon is involved, Celtrion or some other companies like so. But the thing is like means how, because other side is courts are also getting clarity and maturity in terms of deciding the litigation.
Hmm.
And first time we have seen as a being a biosimilar applicant that biosimilar applicant injuncted on certain IPs. So if you till 2023 or till 2022, if you see, you will not find any injunctions by the US courts. And if we really get injuncted, then I think it's really a very difficult scenario. So the solution what I always see is that the day you pick up a biosimilar molecule in your pipeline, and from the day you think about the cloning of the molecule, IP people should definitely work very close to R&D. We should not take, because in biosimilar the another one of the most important thing is like in compared to small molecule, I also litigated small molecule in past, and which I found much even like much easier than biosimilar. The reason is because FDA provides a orange book, so we have a very clear cut number of IP, like 5 6 IPs in the orange book, and we just try to litigate only those IPs. So litigation volume is very low, so
Hmm.
obviously cost is also very low, and the path is very clear and mature. In contrary, in biosimilar, although agencies enacted purple book, but actually the purple book has no real sense, and that need to really develop. Although like with time they are trying to develop, but that purple book still has no maturity, or means like orange book. So being biosimilar applicant, it would be very difficult to judge what type of IP can be asserted. So the best solution is that IP attorneys or IP counsel should definitely work with R&D from the day
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
and try to resolve as much as R&D problem. And that's why like means I always prefer like IP counsel should be definitely belong to the same background of biotech, so that they can really understand the process integrity, and they can guide R&D, because early solution is much better. Yeah, but like once you enter into the litigation, it you like means even if you will not be injuncted, but it will waste your time. So in biosimilar, like as I was mentioning, that if you look at today's trend for denosumab and ustekinumab, there are 4 to 5 players. Even though like consider if you are first or second player, but you spend much time in court, and your second or third or down to line players really manage the litigation well,
Yeah.
and they launch at the same time, or if you get delay and they launch before you, then I think the situation is really not favorable. So that's why IP is one of the key aspects. Commercial agreements are also one of the another aspects which should be managed very well with IP, and the
Yeah.
terms and the condition clauses, everything should be, yeah, is very important.
Yeah, that's a terrific points around IP working with R&D. Julie, I'm curious about biosimilar forums work perhaps in that arena. Does the forum have any program that sort of supports the IP kind of R&D process development sort of phase prior to we've got something that we want to penetrate a market with?
I think that's a really, really great question. And, from a foreign perspective, just from a policy, IP is very important to our members, and getting product approved and, evaluated at the FDA in a timely manner is so important. And I was going to say a couple things about the IP, and I would love, Kaushal, your thinking on this as well. There was recently a paper published regarding looking at the patent dance, and I think the forum will look at this. Is it timely? Could that also be streamlined? And I say that because, one, getting products out into the market is so important for the cost savings. And we really need, after all this time, and as Dr. Patel talked about, the barriers, the things that are so difficult for us to get onto the market and be successful, we need to start to really tear those down. And that IQVIA paper is so important because of the number of biosimilars that are in development right now. There's 112, FDA told us, in development programs at the FDA right now, but there's an opportunity for a lot more biosimilars to be developed that are not being developed. So I wonder about the IP. I think one of the other key things about the IP in the litigation is to think about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act special rule, biosimilar special rule, where a reference product or brand drug would not be negotiated if a biosimilar is going to be on the market within 2 years. That also should emphasize a change in behavior for reference products that don't want to be negotiated. We should see that they are starting to think of how important it is to compete against a biosimilar versus to compete and negotiate with Medicare. And so we hope to see ongoing changes in behavior regarding patent settlements and litigation, and taking a different perspective to get a biosimilar on the market to compete, have free market competition versus negotiation. And that's where getting the biosimilar out there to do it. I'm really grateful that you brought up the Purple Book. That is a priority for the forum as we look at FDA reforms. We have got to get the Purple Book updated. We've got to get those exclusivities out there. And we believe it's just a matter of putting the right resources in the right place at FDA to accomplish this. And that means changes need to happen at the FDA with review and things like that. Again, go back to that IQVIA paper that was just published the other day, this week. Incredibly helpful. You're looking at $180 billion in savings. And now we have over a decade of experience with biosimilar development. Let's make the right changes and accomplish that.